How can you force people to enable macros? Well, I've got 3 ways and I'll show you those right now. Hi, John here from Up for Excel. So you've made this excellent spreadsheet, all these great macros in it, really helpful for the users. What happens? They don't notice that they have to enable them to get it working, and now your spreadsheet doesn't do what it's supposed to do. What are these 3 ways to force people to enable macros then? Well, the first one, you need direct access to the person's PC. So it's definitely going to work for yourself and it'll work for anyone that's around you, but you need to get in behind the scenes in Excel and change the settings. So it's of limited use, but it's quick and simple. Second way, now this tends to work wherever you're on the same network as the other users of the spreadsheet. This one is generally good for work colleagues and in corporate environments. And this will make sure that spreadsheets just run automatically with the macros enabled when you want. The third way, now this will work for anything, including whether you email the file, you download it off the internet from a website, whatever. This way, guaranteed to work, but does require a bit of setup in advance. There's a free spreadsheet to download with this video. It's all set up with method free, so guaranteed to work. Just jump straight to method free in the video and I'll show you how you can use that if you know that you're going to be emailing or using this file with people that are not on the same network as yourself. Right, let's get on with it. If you want users of your spreadsheet to automatically have macros enabled and not be asked about it, then this method might just work for you if you can access the settings in Excel of the computers on which you want the spreadsheet to run. So if you're in a small work group, for example, you could do this, or if it's just for yourself, you could certainly use this method. Nice and simple. Basically, what you do is in Excel, you go to File and Options. And in these options here, you can see you have Trust Center. And Trust Center is where a lot of the security settings are in Excel. So if we click on Trust Center Settings, we'll see about halfway down, Macro Settings. Now, by default, normally you'll find the second one is highlighted. So what this does is it says, disable all macros with a notification. So this is where you get a message saying, would you like to enable the content in this spreadsheet? That's what you get with that. The top one would disable all macros and it wouldn't even tell you. This one is digitally signed macros. Now that is pretty rare that you're going to use this one. I'm saying that actually, if you enable all macros by default, any spreadsheet with macros, the macros will be able to run. Now it says it's not recommended, and I would totally agree. This is not particularly recommended setting, and the reason for it is it can allow code to run automatically. If you've got a spreadsheet that's running automatic code, that could be malicious and it could just trigger that. But if you know that you're in a corporate setting where all the files are under your control or they're all trusted files, that's fine. Click on that setting and away you go. No more asking about macros. They'll all just open automatically. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of this. So I'm going to leave it on disable all macros with notification and click OK for now. And then I will open a macro book and you'll see what happens. So you can see that we're being told to enable content, but it's pretty noticeable. But say we didn't notice that. We click on here, we get this message box, can't run it. They might not be enabled, etc. But if I just close this, so if I'll close, if I now set that setting in the Trust Center, so Trust Center settings, enable all macros, OK, OK. I now go back to that same workbook, open it up, no warning, click on there and macros are working. There you go. Say you want your spreadsheets to open with macros automatically enabled, but you don't really want every other spreadsheet in the entire world to do the same. How can you do that? Now, this method I'm going to show you is particularly good if you're on the same network as other people that are going to be opening your spreadsheet, and you're all opening it from the same location. So you go into Excel options, and in there you see there is Trust Center. Click on Trust Center settings, and near the top, trusted locations. Any spreadsheet that's opened from a trusted location will automatically enable content. It will not ask you. That is exceptionally useful. Now, you might find if you are in a corporate environment, you have some policy locations, maybe a network drive. And if you do, then that means you could save your file into that location and tell other people, send them links, for example, to open it from the same location. It won't ask to enable macros, it just run straight away. What if there's no policy locations? Well, normally you have user locations, and certainly you will probably almost certainly have the Excel start files and some of the Office start files, but you'll also have these templates. So for example, user templates, that can be a useful location, but also application templates. So you could just tell people to save straight to this folder. So what I'm going to do is now copy this spreadsheet into that folder. Now, chances are you might not have permission to save it directly, but you should have permission to copy it into that folder, just as a demonstration. So I've actually opened that folder already. So I'm just going to take the spreadsheet from here. All right, copy that, paste it in there. Right, if I go back to Excel and cancel out of all of this and close it, now I'm going to open from that template location this spreadsheet, and you can see no security warning, macros work straight away. And the same would be true if I set up my own trusted location. So I'm going to do that now. Trust Center, trusted location, add a new location. Obviously I don't want that. I'm just going to browse to any old folder. So I'm just going to put this one on, for example, at the moment, temp 1. You can make subfolders trusted as well. Hit OK. Hit OK. And OK again. Right. Let's close this file. So now if I go back to the original spreadsheet that didn't work, it's asking me to enable content. I now just save it as into my new temp drive that I've made there. So I'll save it in there. Right, now if I close this file, now when I reopen it from that new location, no security warning, completely able to run my macros. So trusted locations, you're in control of if you've got network areas or whatever, that's brilliant. Just put your file on the network, send people links to that file in that trusted location, macros will run. Jobs are good, as they say. So you want to force people to enable macros on your spreadsheet every time they use it, without a doubt. You don't want them even getting anywhere near the thing unless macros are enabled. This is a genuine method that will definitely work for you, and I'll actually show you in a demonstration of how it works. So I'm going to open a file now. When you open it, you're going to get something like this, which basically says you've got to enable macros to see it. Now, there's nothing to this spreadsheet. There's no hidden sheets or anything like that. This is the entire spreadsheet. But if I click enable macros, all of a sudden, I've now got a working macro, of course. But also, it's as though I've opened a completely different spreadsheet. There's no hidden sheets in this or anything like that. So this is where we're going to end up. Now you can download this spreadsheet as it stands with all of this working, and then you can just put your own sheets in it, and it'll work absolutely fine. So, but there are a couple of things that I want to talk you through here, because you're going to need some protection adding to this file. The one I'm letting you download is unprotected, for example. So there's a few things you need to protect so that people can't like hack the method and they just won't be able to get around it. So keep watching and I'll talk you through all of this, how to create it from scratch. Okay, how is this achieved? Every time we close the spreadsheet, we're hiding all the sheets that you can see at the moment and revealing a sheet which tells people to enable macros. And then whenever the spreadsheet is opened, we're doing the reverse. We run a macro that hides the splash screen, which is the message saying enable macros, and reveals all of the previously hidden sheets. Now, of course, that code will only run if you enable macros. So if you don't enable macros, all you see is that splash screen. The moment you enable them, the code runs automatically and everything gets unhidden. Now, there's two techniques you're going to need to know in order to make this work properly. Because one, you need to have macros that are running as soon as a spreadsheet opens. There's no manual intervention there. It's all automatic. So you're going to need automatic macros. You're going to need something called event procedures. But you're also going to need something to stop people unhiding sheets, because at the moment you can see that unhide is grayed out. And if I hide that sheet, for example, and then go to unhide, the only sheet I see still is the one I've just hidden. So I can unhide that. It's as if that other sheet has disappeared into thin air. So in order to achieve the effect of being able to hide something completely, you need to use a property in the VBA called very hidden. So we do Alt F11 to open the VB window. You'll see in this workbook, for example, I've got these 4 sheets. Now I can click on any one of these, for example, on that test, and you'll see there's a property called visible. Now, if the properties window is not available, you can just go to view and properties window, or click F4 and that'll be visible. So yeah, click on the sheet, you can see it says visible. Now, hidden is what I just did. That's the same as manually hiding it in Excel, but you can see you have this very hidden. So when I select very hidden, I go back to my spreadsheet, and not only is the sheet not visible, but I don't even have the ability to unhide it. It's as if the sheet doesn't exist. We're going to make use of that in order to create this sort of splash screen unhiding and hiding technique that you saw earlier. The second technique that we're going to use to create this force macro situation is event-driven procedures in VBA. So what is an event-driven procedure? Well, if I just enable the content on this spreadsheet at the moment, and we'll go to the VBA editor with Alt F11. How are we going to make our code run automatically then? Well, if we click on this workbook, then we can have stuff at workbook level, and the very first one it picks is workbook open. Any code we put in there will run when the workbook opens. Now there are 100 of, well, it's not 100, but there's a lot of other things you can use that activates with the workbook. For now, what we're going to make use of is the open command and the before close command, because when we open the spreadsheet, we want everything to become visible, and when we close it, we want everything hidden so that the next user has to also enable macros. And that is the key to this technique, which I'll talk you through the actual macros that we're using now. I'm in the spreadsheet now that you can download whenever you like. Just click on the link in the description. It's an instant download, so you can open it up straight away, don't have to register, nothing like that. Right, in the first page, I've enabled the macros for now, although it doesn't actually matter, it just makes life a bit simpler. So Alt F11 to go into the VBA editor. Within the, this is just the macro that you can test, but what we're interested in is the workbook sheet, the workbook code. So I click on there, you'll see this code. All the green is just annotations by me, just saying what this code is doing. So you can read through this at your leisure, but I'm going to talk you through the key aspects of it, because you're going to, I always think it's useful to know what the code's doing, because then you can add things to it if you want, or you could even remove stuff, and you know that you're not going to mess it up. So the key aspects are, we've got the workbook open. What it does, main thing it does is call something called the show sheets routine. And that's just sandwiched between a couple of lines of code. They're actually quite important. So just tell you what they are. So the first one is to switch off screen updating. And the reason you do that is, well, there's two reasons you do that. One, you don't want the user to see sheets being hidden, because if the computer's running slow, you'll see it sort of happening. Just want to hide that whole process from view, and also it speeds things up. And then the other thing is, we want to set enable events to false. And what events are event-driven procedures, like, for example, workbook open, workbook close, workbook print, etc., etc. What we do not want during any event procedure, in fact, is to have other event procedures running and triggering. Because if, for example, we, in our workbook open macro, we make a change to the spreadsheet, and there's a workbook and there's a spreadsheet change event procedure somewhere else, it would trigger that. And if we're not careful, we end up in these sort of like continuous loops, jumping from one macro to another. It can massively slow things down. We just switch them off. So switch off the screen, switch off the events, show all our sheets, and then switch the screen back on, switch the events back on. Nice and simple. So what is show sheets doing? So we'll just go to show sheets, which is here. The main core of this is this little loop in the middle, which just runs through every sheet, making it visible, except where it is the splash screen. So it's actually a relatively very small piece of code, but there's a couple of tricky things in here that I just want to talk you through. So firstly, we're setting on error resume next, and that just prevents any debug errors or anything like that appearing in front of the user should something go wrong. There's not much that could go wrong, but it's always worth putting it in. And the one thing that could go wrong is the splash sheet name. Now I'm referring to the splash sheet by its VBA name, and that is the name. When you click on a sheet here, it says name, and I've put it in there. Now you can see the actual sheet name in Excel is called please enable macros, and the problem is someone could change that, so I don't want to refer to it by that name, because you might want to call it something different or whatever, and you still want this code to run. So you just need to, whichever splash sheet you create, you just need to call it SHT splash in the name, or change this piece of code, one or the other. So what we're saying is we'd create a loop through all sheets in the active workbook, and each one's going to be given the variable oSheet for a sheet object. If its VBA name is if its name is the same as the name of the splash sheet, obviously in the splash sheet, then if it's not the same, then you make it visible. So this will keep the splash sheet hidden. Then what we do is we very hide the splash sheet after we've done that. So we've made everything visible, and then we very hide the splash sheet so that no one can know it even exists. And then this is the interesting part, or the different part. We then set the workbook saved property to true. Why do that? Right. This macro runs when the spreadsheet opens, so straight away. So there's no way anyone could have made any changes to the workbook. But because we've been hiding and unhiding sheets, Excel will think there has been a change to the workbook. And we don't want it to think that, because if it thinks that, if the user just goes and closes the spreadsheet, it'll say, do you want to save your changes? And they'll think, well, what changes? I haven't made any. So it's confusing. So we'll set that property to true, and then Excel will not bother to save the workbook, or will not think it doesn't need to save the workbook because nothing's changed. So that's quite key, actually. And then on the last line, on error go to 0, it just resets the error handling back to normal behavior. That's just best practice to just, if you switch something on, you switch back off again afterwards. So that's the show sheets. So that's that. Okay, so we open it, all the sheets show, great, off we go. Right, what about next time though? If I save that workbook halfway through my work, I've now saved it with all the worksheets showing. So surely that's a problem, isn't it? Well, no, because we run another routine before close. Now, before close, basically, just as somebody goes to close the workbook, this routine will run. What's it do? Hides everything and saves it again, essentially. So even if they saved it halfway through their work with all the sheets unhidden, when they close it, it will hide the sheets and save it. And then just before it closes. So in no way can anybody open it and see sort of hidden sheets. So that's what we're trying to achieve. But again, we just have to do something to do with this workbook saved routine or property, just to check something. Because what we need to do is, if the user has saved the workbook at some point, so if the saved is true, then we're going to create our own variable to tell us this. So I'm just calling it a Boolean variable saved. And the reason we want to do that is because we're about to make changes to the worksheet. We're about to start hiding sheets. And when we do that, Excel will tell us that the workbook has not been saved, or the changes have not been saved. But those are changes that we're making in our code. So we don't care about those. What we care about is whether the user has made any changes or not. So if the user has made changes and saved them, we set our variable to true. Otherwise, of course, our variable will be false. Therefore, we'll know that nothing's been saved anyway, right? We then call our hide sheets routine. So just it's the opposite of what we did before. Basically creates this big loop, well, makes the splash sheet visible, because you have to have at least one sheet visible, hides all the other sheets as long as they're not the splash sheet, in the same way that the previous code did, and then jump straight back into here. Where at this point, with all the sheets hidden, we now say, well, was the workbook saved before we did that? Yes, it was. In that case, we're going to save it again with those worksheets hidden. If it wasn't saved before, it doesn't really matter, because by default, it would have had all the sheets hidden anyway. Switch back the screen updating, switch back the events, and off we go. So that was quite a long explanation of this code, or quite a detailed explanation. But I think it's good if you do understand it all, because you can then create other, if you want to put additional workbook opening code in, for example, you want it to do other things, you need to be aware of the fact that events are disabled, that screen updating is disabled, and things like that. So that's why I've talked through it in detail, so you can modify it and add to it if you like. Okay, one very important point indeed is this. You need to password protect this code, because imagine if I go into my spreadsheet, and even if I hadn't enabled macros, I went into the code, I could say, click on anything in here, and I can just change these properties and go, oh yeah, I'll have that visible, thank you very much. Oh, now all of a sudden I can see the splash screen and the rest of it. I could disable the code, could, just delete all that code and save the spreadsheet, ruin all this hard work. So what do you need to do? Well, it's quite simple. You just right click on the VBA project, click on VBA project properties, and you'll see there's a protection tab. You can click on lock project for viewing, and you can give it a password. And if I do that, if I just put a password so I don't forget it, password, and click OK, save the file, go back in, and instantly, because I've already enabled macros, they'll automatically, it remembers the location, and it will just default to enabling them the next time anyway, as long as you keep opening the same file from the same location. Click on here, go to here. I cannot open it. Because I cannot open it, I cannot see the sheets, I cannot make them unhidden, I cannot delete the code unless I got the password, or I know how to crack passwords on VBA projects, which is quite complex but possible. So it's going to take a lot of hard work for anyone to crack this spreadsheet, get into it. They're only going to be able to use it if they enable macros, which is what we wanted all along. Hope you found that useful. Make sure you download that spreadsheet, have a look at it yourself. You can adapt that and use it as you see fit. You can even distribute it, I don't care, not copyrighting the code or anything like that. Make sure you check out the other videos on Up for Excel. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon as well to get notified of the next videos coming out, and I'll see you soon.